Hello, my little fashionistas, and welcome back to Back Lot Banter. Today we are reviewing the kickstart of the summer movie season,
Some have
Disney's
said.
very own Femme Joker. There's many names for this film, but we like to refer to it as Cruella. We're here to talk about Cruella, Tucker and I, and we saw it last night. A preview because today is opening day, and
Sure.
it's available on Disney Plus for anybody who's willing to subject themselves to this. Well, that might be a
And
little
subject
harsh.
themselves to $30 worth of Cruella.
Christ, $30. I just don't understand that business decision and giving away Pixar movies for free. But that's all besides the point. We're here to talk about Cruella. And I said subject yourself to this, but that might be a little harsh because this movie's not terrible. It's better than I expected going into it, quite honestly. I don't know how you, Tucker, how do you feel about it?
I texted a friend this last night. It's simultaneously better than I expected, but worse than I hoped. Because
Hmm.
looking at the trailers and watching the movie, seeing how, as we'll get into, fantastic production design is and stuff, I really thought this was going to be an incredibly artistic, solidly written movie. Of course, some Disney cheese, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, especially in the later sections of the film, it leans really heavily into that Disney cheese. So it did knock it down quite a few points for both of us.
Hmm.
But on the whole, it's actually really well made. It's a visual marvel. It's got a lot of great production value. I enjoyed the performances, so it's a good movie.
Hmm.
But unfortunately it's not for us. We're not the target audience.
No.
So a
And
lot of the humor and the style did not connect.
quite honestly, I'm not really sure who. I think the target audience for this is Disney adults, quite honestly. We're talking like 30 to 40-year-old people who are in love with anything Disney. Because a lot
Sure.
of the decisions made here, it is. We were talking about this last night. It is grittier. They may or not grittier, but this. I mean, they swear. Emma Stone as Cruella gets drunk in this movie, which
Yep.
isn't common amongst a lot of the modern Disney films.
Yeah.
But it is a bit. It does have some more adult themes than a lot of
Mature.
mature, if you will.
Mature. Yes.
And you brought up the production design, and I just like to echo that because this film looks really great. It's very stylish. The setting of like 1970s, 1980s London is captured very well.
Yeah.
The costuming is brilliant. I believe they
Done.
actually. Yeah,
Yeah. Done by a professional fashion
a professional fashion or a stylist or fashion
fashioner.
designers. We don't. I opened this video with that, but I don't know anything about fashion, quite honestly. But hey, those dresses, they sure were pretty, huh?
They sure made a lot of freaking costumes for this
Oh
movie.
my! It for this movie and in this movie, there was a lot of
Yeah.
dressmaking.
Yeah, and I think that's also something that I really appreciate about this film is the idea that they're capturing the fashion, the conflict between fashion
Hmm.
people and the industry and the zeitgeist around it, the news coverage and all that, which is not something I don't think I've ever seen in a movie. And just the fact that they steered really heavily into that. Like that's the main conflict of the film. The main conceit of the film is
Mm.
covering fashion and the conflicts between all the high up fashion people, which is, as I said, something I've never seen in a film before. So the fact that it wasn't just a Disney adventure movie, like they did really put a different spin on it than I was expecting.
Sure. Well, Tucker, clearly you haven't seen The Devil Wears Prada,
No,
which
I
is
haven't.
basically just kind of this movie again. If we're talking
Yeah,
about things that this
inspired
movie
by Cruella. Some
Yeah,
have
and
said.
we're talking about if we're talking about things that we make connections to, lots of people were referring to this as Femme Joker.
Yeah.
And honestly, those comparisons were more apt than I had anticipated. Because if we're going to get into the actual story of this movie, spoilers, by the way, Cruella or Estella, as her actual name is, as we
Mhm.
discover, is the daughter of Emma Thompson. I don't remember her
The
character's name.
Baroness.
The
I don't think
Baroness. Thank
she
you.
doesn't have any name outside of that, as far as I
Yeah.
know.
But she is actually the daughter of the Baroness, her arch nemesis, which is a very obviously very similar to the Joker being the son of Thomas Wayne
Mhm.
in Todd Phillips is the Joker. Uh, but do you want to talk about the actual story of this? Because I feel like that's where it falls apart a lot is in the writing, the Disney cheese as you called it.
Yeah. So, of course, Estella, Cruella, however you want to refer to her, she
Hmm.
refers to herself both ways and sort of as separate characters, which is an interesting idea. Like that she's
Hmm.
turning into this evil persona and projects as a separate personality.
Yeah.
But she's an orphan. She's joined by her friends Horace and Jasper,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got a couple of dogs, and they're thieves. They're thieves, and they're thick as said, and they are living the life. And she wants to become a fashion designer, but they're still thieves, and she ends up wanting to steal stuff and be bad, and she becomes Cruella to do such. But most of the movie takes place and is based around the relationship between Estella and her comrades
Mm-hmm.
of Horace and Jasper, who are really fun. They're kind of side characters, bit characters, but
Yeah.
they have a lot of personality. I think their chemistry is
Yeah.
works well.
I'd like to.
I like the performances.
I just like to shout out maybe one of the worst British accents I've ever heard in modern cinema from Paul Walter Hauser as Horace. Just a
Mhm.
lot of like, I think our friend Gabe, who we watched it with last night, he reenacted the pitch meeting for this. He's like, "Hey Paul, can you do a Cockney accent?" No, and they're like, "Perfect, all right." It's just a lot of him going, "Oh, what's this thing that's going on with the thieves? This is the angle, mate."
Yeah, no. And I couldn't say I really noticed that much. I think I was
Hmm.
mostly focused on their personality and interactions and stuff. But I think that leans into the fact that this movie is pretty cheesy. It
Yeah.
does lean into a lot of like pretty cheap comedic moments and like really on the nose lines. And as we'll get into on the nose other things, but it's kind of a tone that this movie carries throughout. So I wouldn't consider his poor accent a negative for me. But honestly, on the whole, that cheesy tone where things are just kind of obnoxious and on the nose, like, okay, I think that's one of the reasons this movie doesn't hit the highs that I want
Hmm.
it to, is because if it did take itself a little more seriously, of course, Disney's making this, so they want to balance it between mature and a kid's audience. But if it had leaned actually into the mature themes and avoided that corniness, I think I would have preferred that as a style.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it was very hard to parse out if they wanted Estella or Cruella rather to be like an anti-hero or a true protagonist that we actually like or not,
True.
because she's a
Yeah.
bad person. If
Yes.
we could refer back to Horace and Jasper a second, when she becomes Cruella after she discovers that the Baroness killed her mother, she basically is just shitty to them all the time,
Hmm.
nonstop. She
Yep.
and the one scene in this where she has like the chance to apologize for her actions, she basically says, "I went a little bit mad, but we're family, so you have to help me." And the movie
Yeah.
just moves forward from there. There's no reconciliation with her poor behavior.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of ways, that it lends itself again to being a femme joker.
Hmm.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
keep drawing parallels.
The character and the idea that they're making a movie about this character who, as we all remember from 101 Dalmatians, kills dogs
Oh
and
yeah, we'll get to that at the end.
but the idea of making her the protagonist of a film is interesting. We've gotten quite a few villain movies, like, where
Hmm.
they're the protagonist, but I don't know if it works so well for her. She's an interesting character, but at the end of the day, the movie is conflicted in how it wants to portray her.
Hmm.
So when you get moments where you're like, okay, is she apologizing? Is this really just a front? Is she mentally damaged? And that's why it's kind of, none of that is really clarified and kind of just glossed over. And I think that gives it a little bit of a rocky, okay, so how am I supposed to feel about
Yeah.
this?
I think it should be noted that Emma Stone does a great job in this
Yeah,
role
she's
as well.
fantastic.
She's having fun. She's having a blast. She's playing up the cheesiness of the writing.
Hmm.
You can't really call a foul on her for her performance. It's very solid for the
No,
role
yeah.
she was given here.
And,
Uh,
and same with Emma Thompson. I think she is the
yeah.
Baroness. Is like she's a villain in the just coldest way possible. She
Hmm.
doesn't take crap from anyone. She doesn't like even let jokes or anything get to her. She just always is stone faced and just like, no, this is how it is. It's my way
Hmm.
or the highway, as some have said.
Yes.
And I think that works really well. She's a compelling antagonist. She's not particularly complex, and the twist is not good. But
No.
I like her as a performance and as a
Yeah.
villain.
In the beginning of this film,
Good God, good
Cruella
fucking Lord.
Cruella's mother is knocked off a cliff by the three Dalmatians that are owned by the Baroness. And when I saw that on screen, because the revelation that the Baroness was using a dog whistle to sick them on Cruella's mother, that comes later. Um, but I really thought that this film was going to go down the route of Cruella hates Dalmatians because Dalmatians killed her mother. And unfortunately, that did not happen. But boy, it would make me ecstatic if it did.
Well, I think the thing about that, and let's lean into something else, is for some reason this high budget Disney film has some of the weirdest CGI moments I've
Oh,
ever
just
seen.
some real rubbery dogs in this movie.
Yeah, they
Dalmatian. There's a Wink, the cute little eye patch dog,
yeah.
and there's the Buddy or Buster or whatever.
She's got a dog, yeah. But not only that, but that moment where her mom falls off the cliff is sudden. It happens way too fast. The
Mhm.
CGI is god awful. And I'm just standing there like, how did they make this like this dramatic, important scene? How did they not give this a second pass of like quality animation?
Yeah,
Because it's really strange. And throughout the film, I kept noticing how why didn't they use a real dog here? Like it's so obvious as the people aren't interacting with this dog because it's not there, and
hmm
it looks really rubbery and the movements are really weird, and it's just really strange that for such a clearly high production value movie
yeah.
they put barely any of that into the animation.
Yeah. I think there's a few sequences, a few scenes here and there where there's just a thing like that's the take that they went with. That's the editing choice that they went with.
Yeah.
They're sprinkled throughout, and I think it just speaks to maybe some laziness that was also thrown in with the editing and the visual effects of this movie as well. But if we're talking about where the budget went, Tucker, I'd like to bring up one of my biggest issues with this film.
Oh yeah.
And that is the incessant nature with which it plays its soundtrack. This has to have, I haven't looked at the soundtrack on Spotify or anything, but it has to have a long, long list of songs in the soundtrack because there are parts in this movie where a popular song ends, there's about 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, and a new popular song picks up. Sometimes there isn't even that. Sometimes it just flows from one to the next.
Yeah.
I think the longest this movie goes, if I can make an approximation, the longest movie goes without playing a song from its soundtrack, some Rolling Stones or some Queen or various other like recognizable songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s. I think the longest it goes can't be more than 10, 15 minutes.
Hmm. I mean, that's a reasonable amount of time. Although, and as I think we should note, this movie's long and it doesn't
Oh,
need to be so.
no,
It's
it is
what
too long as
it's
well.
220, 2 hours,
Yeah.
20 minutes or something like that, which is just unnecessary. I mean,
mhm.
this could be a snappy 140 or something
Oh,
like that.
absolutely.
And it really could be trimmed down. I don't necessarily think that a lot that there's a whole extra set of side plots with characters that aren't fleshed out. She's got a childhood
Yeah.
friend who doesn't really play into the story. She's got
There's
a buddy
another,
named Artie who
yeah,
doesn't
another
really
one of,
do a lot of stuff. So
yeah.
it's interesting that they stuffed this so full and wanted it to be so long when that really wasn't necessary. And I think the movie would have benefited from a shorter runtime.
Yeah, Artie, of course, another one of Disney's famous first gay characters. The fourth or fifth first gay character, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we talked about the stylish nature up top, which the soundtrack plays into that. But it also is just like, oh my god, just pay a composer to make a score for this movie for Christ's sake.
Yeah, there is score occasionally, but it really is overshadowed by, and they're not. It's not focused on, but it's
No,
very overshadowed
yeah,
by the soundtrack, and that's something that I don't necessarily have a huge problem with. But every time that they started a new song that was both very frequent and almost always very on the nose
hmm
lyrically for what's
there's
happening in the
a
scene,
there's
I would
a
see you go, oh,
there's
and
a few
just
number of
shudder.
there's a few number of songs that have the word dog in them. And of course, if we can get to the end of the film and wrap up this review a little bit, Tucker,
Please.
um, they play, they take a note from the book of 2016 Suicide Squad and play "Sympathy for the Devil." Tucker, I'm not sure if you caught this, but Cruella's last name is actually DeVille, which is an homage to the word devil. And
Wow.
sympathy for the devil is actually played during the end of this movie, and I wanted to bash my brains out when that started. When I heard that, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is how we're gonna end this."
Hmm.
And if we could talk about another way, because the way the film ends is Cruella gets back, she regains the mansion that Emma Thompson, the Baroness, once owned because she's the rightful heir to the
Hmm.
to the fortune.
Of course.
Horace and Jasper are there. Mark Strong is there, who's also in this movie and does a fine job, I guess.
Hmm.
And there's a classic origin storyline, the way that you have to end an origin story movie, which is so what do we do now? And then Cruella turns and she goes, I have a few ideas. But based on our knowledge, Tucker, of Cruella
Yeah.
DeVille as a character, we can only assume that she means that she wants to murder over 100 puppies.
Yep. And we don't actually know where this takes place, if it's the same quote unquote timeline where that does happen, if she's a different version of Cruella, where how many years before the events of that movie
I
are.
choose to believe that she is not a different version, that she was specifically meant she wanted to murder dozens and dozens of puppies.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if they make a Cruella 2, because it's possible. They've set up characters and relationships in a fashionista world that Cruella exists in.
Mhm.
I think her involvement in becoming popular and in bombing the Baroness's galas and stuff, that's all really fun. And
Oh yeah,
I do think there is potential for continuing this character. Not that I'm excited for that,
I think there was
but it's
potential in this.
possible.
I think there was potential in this very movie. I mean, we talked about the visual striking nature of a lot of the production design and costuming. A
Yeah.
lot of the montages, even though they're bogged down by that soundtrack, that's a little annoying. A lot of that montage stuff is cool, especially when she's continuously making herself known to the Baroness in increasingly bombastic ways. A lot of that
Yeah.
is fun. It's a lot. This movie has fun, but it's a lot of drudgery as well. Just like
True. Yeah.
The Disney cheese that we talked about, and just the movie's taking itself too seriously at points. But
Mhm.
so I mean, this will probably make enough money that they'll keep doing like Disney villain origin movies. So
Oh God, I here's the thing. I'm not a big Disney guy, and I haven't seen 101 Dalmatians since I was like 7. And I don't really care for it. And I
mhm.
don't necessarily give a crap about any of the Disney villains, but it's certainly possible that they continue this. Disney has become known for remaking their older stuff in the live action style. Though I would say this retelling prequel origin story stuff is more interesting because it
Mhm.
actually is a unique story and it's not
Yeah,
based solely on nostalgia. There was actually
I
a small amount of nostalgia bait for like, hey, references to the original
Yeah,
movie.
there was some visual, like when she's driving or whatever, when she steals the car from a party. The way that she drives is very reminiscent of the animation of Cruella from the
Sure.
old 101 Dalmatians animation. But I think other than that, let me say this: I'd watch Cruella again before I ever watched 2019 Lion King. So there, take that
So
with
it's
what
on
you
the
will.
up and up for the live action Disney movies.
True, they're continuously getting better, and they'll probably get worse again at some point. But that's all that we have for you. If you like this video, if you like a review, hit subscribe. We have all sorts of content here at Backlog Banter. We do movies, we do games, we do just some all sorts of creative. We go around the horn and we have fun. And I went off the rails a little bit with that one, but thanks for watching, everyone.